It's week 12 of the NFL season, and here are my predictions for this week. But first, how did I do last week in my predictions? In week 11, I went 9-5. So kicking off the week on Thursday Night Football, we have the 8-2 Steelers versus the 2-8 Browns. The Steelers are coming off of a 18-16 win over the Ravens, and in that game, they scored no touchdowns and just 6 field goals. This is their second game they've won this season with kicking 6 field goals. In that game, Russell Wilson went 23 of 36, 205 yards, and an interception. Najee Harris had 63 yards rushing, and George Pickens led them with 8 receptions and 89 yards. Then for the Browns, they lost 35-14 against the Saints. And this game was tied 14-14 entering the fourth quarter, but the Saints would go on to score 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. But Jameis Winston went 30 of 46, 395 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nick Chubb had 50 yards rushing, and Jerry Jeudy had 6 receptions, 142 yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown was 89 yards. But this Browns defense has been giving up the long ball a lot this season, and even in this game, they gave up a 71-yard touchdown to Marquez Valdes-Scantling and a 75-yard touchdown to Taysom Hill. And even in the Chargers game, they gave up a 66-yard touchdown, so I wouldn't be surprised if George Pickens had like a 50-yard touchdown. But the Steelers have now won 5 games in a row, and they're allowing just 16 points per game, which is second in the NFL. The Browns are only averaging 16 points per game, which is second worst. And they lost their backup left tackle, DeJuan Jones, with a broken ankle. So I have the Steelers winning. Then moving over to Sunday, the 4-6 Buccaneers versus the 2-8 Giants. Both of these teams are coming off their bye week. In the Buccaneers' last game, they lost 23-20 against the 49ers, and that's their 4th straight loss. And in the Giants' last game, they lost 20-17 against the Panthers in Germany. But the Giants also benched Daniel Jones, and Tommy DeVito is going to be their starter. But Jones is not even going to be their backup. He's getting moved to their 3rd string. Then Mike Evans has been upgraded to questionable this week, so that could be huge for the Buccaneers, and I have the Buccaneers winning. Next, the 9-1 Chiefs versus the 3-7 Panthers. The Chiefs are coming off their first loss of the season, 30-21 against the Bills. Patrick Mahomes went 23 of 33, 196 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. This season, Mahomes is leading the NFL in interceptions with 11. Then Kareem Hunt had 60 yards rushing, and Xavier Worthy had 4 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. And Isaiah Pacheco could potentially return this week. Then for the Panthers, they're coming off their bye week, and in their last game, they beat the Giants in Germany, so they have now won 2 games in a row, but I have the Chiefs winning. Then the 3-7 Cowboys versus the 7-4 Commanders. The Cowboys are coming off a 34-10 loss against the Texans on Monday Night Football. Cooper Rush went 32 of 55, 354 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and CeeDee Lamb had 8 receptions for 93 yards. Then for the Commanders, they lost 26-18 against the Eagles on Thursday Night Football. Jaden Daniels went 22 of 32, 191 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Brian Robinson Jr. had 63 yards and a touchdown, and Austin Eckler had 8 receptions for 89 yards. The Commanders have lost 2 games in a row, but with all the Cowboys' injuries and Dak being out for the rest of the season, I have the Commanders winning. Then the 3-8 Patriots versus the 4-6 Dolphins. The Patriots are coming off a 28-22 loss against the Rams, and in that game Drake May played very well, going 30 of 40, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Then Ramondre Stevenson had 73 yards rushing, and Kendrick Bourne had 5 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. Then the Dolphins got their 2nd straight win, 34-19 against the Raiders. Tua went 28 of 36, 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then Devin Achane had 73 yards rushing and a touchdown, and 32 yards receiving. And Jonnu Smith led them with 6 receptions, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. With Tua, this Dolphins offense has a lot more life, and they're a completely different team than a few weeks ago. So I have the Dolphins winning. Then the 2-8 Titans versus the 7-4 Texans. Last week the Titans lost 23-13 against the Vikings. In that game, Will Levis had 2 295 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and they didn't have any run game going, with a total of 33 yards as a team. Then Nick Westbrook-Akinhei had 2 receptions for 117 yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown was 98 yards. Then in the Texans win over Dallas, CJ Stroud went 23 of 34, 257 yards, and an interception. Joe Mixon had a huge game with 109 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing, and 2 receptions for 44 yards. So he's now up to 760 yards and 10 touchdowns. But the Titans did stop the Vikings run game, holding them to 82 yards on 33 carries. But even if the Texans don't get their run game going, they got Nico Collins back last week. But Will Anderson Jr. is still questionable, and he's missed their last 2 games. But I still have the Texans winning. Then the 9-1 Lions versus the 5-6 Colts. The Lions are coming off a massive blowout, 52-6 against the Jaguars. Jared Goff went 24 of 29, 412 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Then they dominated in the run game, with 196 yards and 3 touchdowns as a team. David Montgomery had 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Jahmyr Gibbs had 69 yards and a touchdown. Then on the receiving side, Amon-Ra St. Brown had 11 receptions, 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jameson Williams had 124 yards and a touchdown. This Lions team is all around the best team in the NFL, and it's going to be hard for anyone to stop them. But for the Colts, they beat the Jets 28-27. And they took the lead in this game with 46 seconds when Anthony Richardson got his second rushing touchdown. And Richardson had a pretty good game, going 20 of 30, 272 yards and a touchdown, and 32 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns. Then Josh Downs led them with 5 receptions, 84 yards, and a touchdown. But the Colts are giving up the 5th most rushing yards this season per game at 143. So Montgomery and Gibbs should both have good games, and I have the Lions winning. Then the 8-2 Vikings versus the 4-6 Bears. Then in the Vikings win over the Titans, Sam Darnold went 20 of 32, 246 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Justin Jefferson had 6 receptions for 81 yards. Then on their defense, they had 5 sacks and an interception. Then for the Bears, they lost 20-19 against the Packers, and this one came down to the last play of the game, where the Bears attempted a 46-yard field goal and it was blocked. That was the end of the game. So they have now lost 4 games in a row, and this is a must-win divisional game for them. But this last week, Caleb Williams went 23 of 31, 231 yards, and he had 70 yards rushing, and Rome Odunze had 6 receptions for 65 yards. I think this is going to be a close game, but I still have the Vikings winning. Then the 6-5 Broncos versus the 2-8 Raiders. The Broncos are coming off a 38-6 win over the Falcons, and Bo Nix had an incredible game, and by far his best game of his career. He went 28 of 33, 307 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then Javonte Williams had 59 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Cortland Sutton had 7 receptions for 78 yards. And on defense, they had 4 sacks and an interception, and held the Falcons to just 226 yards. Then for the Raiders, in their loss against the Dolphins, Gardner Minshew went 30 of 43, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Then Brock Bowers had 13 receptions, 126 yards, and a touchdown. And he's having a monster rookie season with 70 receptions and 700 yards. But other than that, the Raiders have been struggling all season long, and I have the Broncos winning. Then the 5-5 49ers versus the 7-3 Packers. The 49ers are coming off of a 20-17 loss against the Seahawks. In that game, Brock Purdy went 21 of 28, 159 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Christian McCaffrey had 79 yards rushing, and Jawan Jennings had 10 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. But this week, Brock Purdy is questionable with a shoulder injury, and Nick Bosa is also questionable with a hip injury. Then the Packers win over the Bears. Jordan Love went 13 of 17, 261 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Josh Jacobs had 76 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Christian Watson had 4 receptions for 150 yards. And Jair Alexander is also questionable this week. But with all the 49ers injuries, and how well the Packers have been playing, I have the Packers winning. Then the 6-4 Cardinals versus the 5-5 Seahawks. The Cardinals are coming off their bye week, and in their last game in Week 10, they beat the Jets 31-6, and they have now won 4 games in a row. Then for the Seahawks, in their win against the 49ers, Geno Smith went 25 of 32, 221 yards and an interception. Then Kenneth Walker had 54 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Jackson Smith-Njigba had 10 receptions for 110 yards. So in his last 2 games, he has 17 receptions, 290 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But the Seahawks have lost their last 4 home games. So with the Cardinals coming off their bye week, and with how hot they've been, I have the Cardinals winning. Then on Sunday Night Football, the 8-2 Eagles versus the 5-5 Rams. In the Eagles' win against the Commanders on Thursday Night Football, Jalen Hurts went 18 of 28, 221 yards, and had 39 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. And Saquon Barkley had another huge game with 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. And to put it into perspective of how good he's been playing this season, that 146 yards is the 4th most he's had in a game this season. Then in the Rams' win over the Patriots, Matt Stafford went 18 of 27, 295 yards and 4 touchdowns. Puka Nacua had 7 receptions, 123 yards and a touchdown. And Cooper Kupp had 6 receptions, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The Eagles have now won 6 games in a row, and the Rams have won 4 out of their last 5. I could see this being a pretty high-scoring game, and I have the Rams winning. Then on Monday Night Football, the 7-4 Ravens versus the 7-3 Chargers. And this is also the Hardball brothers going against each other. So in the Ravens' loss against the Steelers, Lamar Jackson went 16 of 33, 207 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Derrick Henry had 65 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Isaiah Likely had 4 receptions for 75 yards. Then for the Chargers, they beat the Bengals 34-27, and in this game it was tied late in the 4th quarter, and J.K. Dobbins scored a 29-yard touchdown with 18 seconds left to take the lead. Justin Herbert went 17 of 36, 297 yards and 2 touchdowns, and led the team with 65 yards rushing. Then Ladd McConkey had 6 receptions for 123 yards, and he's been having a great rookie season with 43 receptions and 615 yards. The Chargers are currently on a 4-game winning streak, and they have allowed the fewest points this season with 114.5 points per game. But with how good this Chargers defense has been, and their offense has been looking a lot better lately, I have the Chargers winning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.